Okay, we've kind of danced around it all night. Let's talk about the reaction to this. Not all negative, as we just saw. Let me do some introductions here in this next table. Aaron Taylor from St. Louis University has a legislative background for sure. Kate Casas, Children's Education Alliance of Missouri.
That's right.
SEAM, if you see it on Twitter. Right. And Alvin Reed. Thank you for coming back to the show, obviously, from Donnybrook.
Anytime.
I guess, real quickly, let's kind of just talk about where the politics break down just for a second, because, Kate, I know you and your husband are involved in Democratic politics. I know we have a billionaire libertarian doing some of the funding for the education organization you're involved with now. Are these strange partnerships that are forming here around this issue?
Well, I think it'd be fair to say that politics and education policy might make strange bedfellows, but no, it's true that my husband and I are very involved in Democratic politics, and that the Singfield Charitable Foundation is one of hundreds of donors to my organization. But on this particular issue, our ideology and wants for St. Louis's kids, the St. Louis region of Missouri's kids align.
Okay, sometimes I bring up topics that could be a whole nother show, so I won't let that tangent go too far. Let me just open it up to you guys. Were you surprised by the reaction that you've seen to this across the board, for educators, parents, students? What have you seen, and have you been surprised?
Well, the Francis Howell town hall meeting was not surprising, but it was very much, stark, because what we're seeing is people responding with reactions that are exaggerated. They're talking about violence, and if you look at the data, that's not as big of a risk as they say it is. Normally, Normandy School District had fewer incidences of drugs in the schools than Francis Howell did last year. They had more violent incidences, but we're talking about 20 over the course of an entire school year. Not to say that's a low number, one is too many, but it's not this World War Z reality that many people are trying to make us think it is.
The reaction surprised you, Alvin?
No, not at all, not really. And I think that, I'm involved with the Kirkwood School District, and that's where my kids go to school, that's where I live. And for many months, we've been talking about this, on Donnybrook and other programs. So if the Supreme Court rules the way it did, this is going to create a situation that's going to, in a very short period of time, there are going to be a lot of transfers, there's going to be a lot of problems, there's going to be a lot of stark reaction. I think that was a good word that you used. I was not surprised at all. I think that what the key now is, okay, if these kids are going to come to your school, be it Francis Howell, be it Melville, we've been doing this in the St. Louis area for 30 years now? This has been done, it works, and it will work in Francis Howell. Don't worry about what went on in Normandy, worry about what goes on in Francis Howell, and I think that'll be fine. But with the reaction, I honestly, I was not shocked by that.
Well, and I want to say unfortunately, I wasn't shocked by the reaction, and I think, unfortunately, nobody was shocked by the reaction, which is exactly why the school districts of Francis Howell and Melville were chosen for transportation. And so I might not agree with all of the things that were said at the Francis Howell meeting last week, or even most of the things that were said at the Francis Howell meeting last week, but I really would hate for the conversation to be about which parents in which district care more about their kids, are more engaged, when it's really about the administration in the unaccredited districts not being prepared sooner to deal with this, and the administration in the accredited districts not being prepared. As I said to these guys earlier, if we're talking about race, then yes, let's please talk about the Francis Howell Town Hall meeting. But if we're talking about school transfers, then let's talk about why we weren't more prepared over the last 20 years when the bill was signed in 1993 to deal with the issue that we're now seeing unfold in the region.
The irony is, if you look at the legislative record of the bill, there was very little, if any, opposition to this particular aspect of it. The opposition mainly was about the cost of it and things of that nature, but folks were not complaining about the accountability aspect of the law.
Did we think we would get to this point in the next 20 years? Is that why we weren't preparing for it? We didn't think it would actually happen?
I don't know, in that I didn't really know how the Supreme Court was going to rule on this, and I thought maybe it might go to a higher court, maybe in the United States Supreme Court. But when the state Supreme Court ruled unanimously, I don't want to say I was caught totally unaware, but I was like everyone else. I'm like, man, there's only 6 weeks kind of before the deadline is before the kids have to decide where they're going to go to school. The ball is rolling, downhill. So people can be upset, or they can be loud, they can be whatever they want to be, but it's happening. And you have a legislature that cannot do anything about it until really next spring, and even then it would be for the next school year. And I heard this touched upon just a little bit earlier, and I really wanted to get this out here. I really wanted to say, any child that transfers this year, whatever changes, they should be allowed to stay in that school district for the rest of their high
You're
school
saying
and
if their
elementary
school
year.
becomes reaccredited.
It becomes reaccredited. If they decide this whole thing didn't work and it's a wash, and if you start in Francis Howell or Melville next year, you should be allowed to finish your education in that school.
Because that's not how the law works.
No, not at all.
That's not what it says. But I agree with Alvin, and he brings up, he touches on a really important point, which is that all of this should be far more student-centered. It should be far more what is the best, easiest way for a child to get a high-quality education. And stop putting up barriers to that. Stop making it about what's best for the school district. Start making it about what's best for each individual kid, and let each administrator who has a child show up in their school in August focus on the kids that show up at their school in August. And I think if everybody could do that and start making decisions based on what's best for the individual children, which is what the legislature did in 1993 when they wrote this law. They were focused on individual kids, not school districts. And I think we need to head back in that direction to a student-centered, family-centered approach.
Are you saying it should be easier to transfer to closer school? Because I know you said publicly that you think these districts where they've chosen to provide the transportation are too far away, and you've even said intentionally, so hopefully they wouldn't transfer. But is that what you're saying? It should be easier to do this? Is that
Absolutely, and the families should have had a say. People are saying, this is school choice, run amok, and all this stuff. This is not school choice. This is what we had before, just a little tweak. If you need transportation, this is not school choice for you. You still only have one, now maybe two choices. That's not school choice. That's not student-centered. That's not family-centered.
Of course, where do you get the resources to bus a kid anywhere he wants to go? To make it easier. I mean, there are limitations here, no?
Absolutely, and I don't think any district could say like, okay, the bus for Kirkwood leaves at this time and the bus for Webster leaves at this time, and you have 20 different buses going 20 different places. I don't think that works. Okay, unless Rex wants to pay for it, which has been suggested by several columnists. But that may not work. But I think that there has to be some way where the immediate reaction is not to send the kids 20 miles. And look, if you go to Francis Howell, go to Francis Howell, graduate from Francis Howell. Go to Melville, graduate from Melville, do what you need to do. Because I think in both school districts, what are you going to do with the kid? And there will be a lot of kids that come out there and get a 3.0 or get a 4.0. And they play an instrument, and they're maybe on the baseball team, and they do everything that every other student. Are you going to want to say goodbye to that student for whatever reason? And I think the answer to that is no. So maybe it's not the best thing to travel that far, but a lot of people are going to want to do it because they want that opportunity, and they're going to succeed. And what do you tell them? And you can't tell them you just have to go.
I think that's a point that's getting lost in all this, the manner in which these receiving districts will benefit from the students that come to them, because many of these students will be excellent students. They'll excel in the classroom on these tests, extracurricularly, and so these school districts will benefit from the increased diversity as well as the performance.